Good morning, children. It's Thursday, 21st May 2020. Welcome to the next chapter of Street Child. Now, today we'll be doing guided reading questions about Street Child, and we'll be doing something about complex sentences as well. Okay, let's move ahead. Now, again, the resources you will need as usual are a pen and a sheet of paper. Now, learning intention to summarize the key points in a chapter. Success criteria: I can understand complex sentences. I can summarize key points when reading appropriate text, showing understanding of the main significant ideas, themes, events, and characters. So, write down your learning intention neatly on your sheet of paper. Chapter 16. Boy in Pain. Jim lay awake listening to the sounds of laughter that floated down from the Queen of the North. He felt very lonely. Clouds had thickened and the sky was darker than he had ever known it. The night seemed to stretch on forever. I wish I had got a brother, he thought. He said it out loud. I wish I'd got a brother. His voice was a tiny, quavering thing. He stood up and shouted, I wish I'd got a brother. He thought of Tip sleeping in the workhouse in the snuffling darkness. He thought of shrimps in a lodging house full of snoring old men. He thought of Josh's son tucked up in a proper bed with real mothers and sisters. You got lots of brothers, Jim, he said to himself. The way shrimps would have said it, only they ain't around at the moment is all. He pulled his sack round him and fell asleep. Now read the remaining chapter quietly in your minds. Okay, I'm going to read the ending of the chapter. Thought you'd try it, did you? Nick bellowed. He picked Jim up and threw him down into the hold of the lily on top of the coals. You'll know better next time. He slid the hatchbolts shut over Jim's head. Jim lay in the dark, nursing his leg where Snipe had ripped his flesh. It was hot and wet with blood. He had never known such pain in his life before. So in this chapter, we come to know that Jim tried to escape from Nick, but he was caught, and Snipe actually bit him, and he hurt his leg very, very badly. And it was such unbearable pain. He had never known such pain in his life before. So his attempt at trying to escape was ruined, and he was caught red-handed by Nick and Snipe. Now here are a few guided reading questions. How does Jim try to comfort himself? Why does Jim's reaction surprise Nick when he throws the scraps at him? Why does Jim wish he was Snipes? Why has Josh got a job on shore? What prompts Jim to try and escape? Write down the answers before you go on the next slide. Pause the slide and write down the answers. Now, the answers to the questions are: he comforted himself by saying that he had lots of brothers, only they were not around at the moment. Next answer: Jim did not eat the scraps thrown at him. This surprises Nick, and he says that he could not understand Jim. Jim wished he was Snipes because Nick treated him better. He sometimes fondled his head and fed him tasty scraps from his pocket. Josh had found a job on shore because he wanted to see more of his family. There was a storm one day and Jim saw a village in a distance. He thought that he could escape to the village in the noise of the storm. Now, today in SPAG, we are going to learn something about complex sentences. Okay, now read the slide silently in your mind. What is a complex sentence? Now, getting started, what is a main clause? A main clause, or it would be called a simple sentence, is a group of words that expresses one complete thought. Every main clause must contain a subject and a verb. They can also be called independent clauses. Can you spot the subjects and the verbs in these main or independent clauses? The horse galloped. Mr. Richardson ate some cheese. Now, what is the subject and what is the verb in these main or independent clauses? Okay, it's the same. Main and independent clauses are the same. It's just a simple sentence. What's the subject and what's the verb? The horse galloped. Mr. Richardson ate some cheese. Write it down on your sheet of paper. Okay, now in these sentences, horse is the subject and Mr. Richardson is the subject. Galloped is the verb and ate is the verb. Now, what is a complex sentence? A complex sentence is made up of main clause and then one or more dependent clauses. There are two ways of creating dependent clauses. By using a subordinate conjunction, example after, to create a subordinate clause. For example, the horse galloped after it jumped the fence. Okay, so the horse galloped was just a simple sentence, but now I've added a subordinating conjunction, which is after it jumped the fence. So you add extra information using a relative clause. Mr. Richardson, who was feeling ravenous, ate some cheese. So Mr. Richardson ate some cheese was just a simple sentence, but I've added extra information, which is who was feeling ravenous. Now, next step, subordinating conjunctions. Firstly, let's look at creating complex sentences by using subordinate clauses that begin with a subordinating conjunction. Okay, now read the sentence. It's an acronym to help you remember the first letters of some of the most important subordinating conjunctions. So the I stands for if, since, as, when, although, while, after, before, until, and because. Okay, so I saw a WABU is it's an acronym. It helps you understand the most important subordinating conjunctions whenever you're making a complex sentence. So how do we use subordinating conjunctions? Subordinating conjunctions are the first words within a subordinate clause. Subordinate clauses do not make sense on their own, they are dependent. But when they are used with a main clause, they create a complex or a multi-clause sentence. Subordinating clauses will always have a subject and a verb within them. For example, before they left is the subordinating conjunction. Before is the subordinating conjunction. Okay, they is the subject and left is the verb. So is a subordinate clause. Before they left is a subordinate clause. Before the holidays. Here before is being used as a preposition and is not a subordinate clause. Can you spot the subordinate clause and the subordinating conjunction in this complex sentence? Juvenile penguins are able to swim although their feathers aren't yet waterproof. Okay, so what is the subordinate clause and what is the subordinating conjunction? Okay, so the subordinate clause is although their feathers aren't yet waterproof. Okay, and although, actually the circle is slightly to this side, but actually although is the subordinating conjunction. Okay, here are a few others that you can try. The Boy Scouts sang around the campfire until it was time for bed. Okay, so until is the subordinating conjunction. Now try these. So here actually if is the subordinating conjunction. In the complex sentences we have looked at so far, the subordinate clause has always come after the main clause. But watch. Okay, now sometimes it can come even before the main clause. Okay, so although their feathers aren't yet waterproof, juvenile penguins are able to swim. Okay, so here the subordinate clause has actually come before the main clause. Subordinating conjunctions can also be used as the first word in a complex sentence. When the subordinate clause comes before the main clause, make sure you remember to use a comma to mark where the subordinate clause ends. Okay, so you can see here that after waterproof there is a comma to show that the subordinate clause has ended there. Now, can you swap these sentences around so that the subordinate clause comes before the main clause? Don't forget your commas. The Boy Scouts sang around the campfire until it was time for bed. Okay, so try bringing the subordinate clause before the main clause. Hakim could win the talent contest if he improved his juggling skills. So try bringing the subordinate clause before the main clause and write down your sentences on your sheet of paper. Okay, now these are the answers. Until it was time for bed, comma, the Boy Scouts sang around the campfire. If he improved his juggling skills, comma, Hakim would win the talent contest. Now, can you spot some complex sentences from the chapter? For example, I found one. Grimy Nick was laughing softly to himself as he came down the ladder. So this was one of the complex sentences that I spotted from the chapter. Can you spot a few others? Now, there's no need to write this down because the task is the activity that you need to write down. But you can go back and see if you can spot any complex sentences from the chapter. Now, your task is you're going to summarize chapter 16 in a tweet using only 140 characters. Why not try using a hashtag too? Okay, so what's happening in chapter 16? You literally have to use only 140 characters. So it has to be like really small. Okay, so summarize what has happened in chapter 16. It's a long chapter, but you literally have to use only 140 words to summarize the entire chapter. What has happened in chapter 16? Write it down on your sheet of paper and then email to me the task, and I will be giving you feedback on your emails. Good luck with the task and see you tomorrow. Bye.